The businessman shoved past Marcus Webb so hard that his daughter's toy jet clattered to the floor. "Watch it!" the man snapped without looking back. Marcus said nothing. He bent down, picked up the small metal plane he'd welded from scrap for Lily's birthday, and slipped it back into her tiny hands. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. To everyone on Flight 847, he was just another broke father in worn-out boots, taking up space in Seat 12F. But 30,000 feet above the Earth, two F-35 pilots were about to change everything. Because Marcus Webb had a secret, a call sign, and a debt that was about to be repaid in the most extraordinary way. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The alarm screamed at 4:15 a.m. Marcus Webb's hand shot out from under the thin blanket and slammed the off button before the second ring. He lay still for 3 seconds staring at the cracked ceiling of his one-bedroom apartment in South Chicago. The radiator clanked. The neighbor's dog barked twice, then went quiet. He didn't need the alarm, really. He hadn't slept past 4 in years. His body remembered the military schedule even when his mind tried to forget. "Daddy!" Lily's small voice came from the doorway. She stood there in her oversized pajamas, the ones with the faded airplanes on them, clutching Mr. Bear against her chest. "Hey, sweetheart." Marcus sat up and forced a smile. "What are you doing awake?" "I heard a noise." "That was just my alarm. Big day today, remember?" Lily nodded slowly. Her eyes were still heavy with sleep, but something else flickered there too. Worry. She was only 6 years old, but she'd learned to read her father's moods better than any adult could. "Are we really going on an airplane?" "We really are. To see Uncle Danny." "That's right." Marcus swung his legs off the bed and reached for the jeans draped over the chair. "He's got a job waiting for me. A good one. Things are gonna be different after today, Lily. I promise." She padded across the cold floor and climbed onto his lap. Her small arms wrapped around his neck. "Mommy used to say that." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He held her closer, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Yeah," he whispered. "She did." The bus to O'Hare left at 5:30 a.m. Marcus carried Lily on his hip and their single duffel bag over his shoulder. Everything they owned fit in that bag. 2 changes of clothes for each of them. Lily's coloring books, the folder with his resume and military discharge papers, and Sarah's wedding ring tucked into a small velvet pouch he never let out of his sight. The bus was nearly empty at this hour. A few night shift workers heading home, a young woman with headphones staring out the window, an old man sleeping in the back row. Marcus chose a seat near the front and settled Lily beside him. "How long is the flight, Daddy?" "About 4 hours." "That's a long time." "Not so long. You can sleep or draw. I brought your crayons." Lily pulled the toy jet from her pocket and held it up to the window, making it fly through the early morning darkness. "Tell me about the real planes again." Marcus smiled. This was their ritual. She asked the same question almost every night, and he told the same stories. About the F-35s, about the squadron, about the men who flew faster than sound and trusted him to keep them alive. "Well," he began, "they're called Lightning IIs. They're the fastest, most advanced fighter jets in the world. Faster than cars. Much faster. They can fly over 1,000 miles an hour." "Wow." Lily's eyes went wide. "Did you fly them?" "No, sweetheart. I fixed them. I was a crew chief. That means I made sure everything worked perfectly before the pilots took off." "So you kept them safe?" "I tried to." Lily studied the toy jet in her hands. Marcus had made it from scrap metal at the welding shop, cutting and shaping each piece during his lunch breaks. It wasn't perfect, but Lily treated it like treasure. "Mommy said you were a hero." Marcus looked away. Outside, the city lights blurred past. "Mommy was too kind. She said you saved people." "I just did my job, Lily." "But you saved them. That makes you a hero." Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't explain to a 6-year-old that heroes didn't end up like him. Heroes didn't work double shifts at a welding shop for minimum wage. Heroes didn't count pennies to afford bus fare. Heroes didn't watch their wives die in a hospital bed while they held their daughter and tried not to scream. He pulled Lily closer and kissed the top of her head. "Try to rest, sweetheart. Long day ahead." O'Hare International Airport was a cathedral of chaos. Even at 7 in the morning, the terminal swarmed with travelers. Business executives in tailored suits marched past with phones pressed to their ears. Families herded children toward gates. College students sprawled across seats with backpacks for pillows. Marcus navigated through the crowd with Lily's hand gripped firmly in his. He felt the familiar sensation of being watched and judged. His work boots steel-toed and scuffed from years of labor. His jacket clean but clearly old. His face weathered beyond his 42 years. A woman in designer clothes glanced at him, then quickly looked away. A security guard tracked his movement a beat too long. "Daddy, I'm hungry." Marcus checked his wallet. $37. That had to last until they reached Portland. Until Danny could give him an advance on the job. "Let's find our gate first, okay? Then we'll get something." They walked past a coffee shop where a latte cost more than Marcus earned in an hour. Past a gift store selling stuffed animals for $30 each. Past a restaurant where businessmen laughed over mimosas and eggs Benedict. Lily stopped suddenly. "Look, Daddy." She pointed at a large poster on the wall. It showed an F-35 soaring through clouds, sleek and powerful, with the words, "AR Force, aim high" across the bottom. Marcus stared at the image. For a moment, he was 23 again, standing on the flight line at Hill Air Force Base, the Utah sun beating down on his back. The roar of engines. The smell of jet fuel. The pride of wearing the uniform. "That's your plane," Lily said excitedly. It was. Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Come on, we need to keep moving." Gate B7 was at the far end of the terminal. By the time they arrived, Marcus's shoulder ached from the duffel bag, and Lily was dragging her feet. The gate area was already filling with passengers waiting for the Chicago to Portland flight. Marcus found 2 empty seats near the window and guided Lily into one. "Stay right here, okay? I'm going to check us in." "Okay, Daddy." He walked to the counter where a gate agent was typing rapidly on her computer. Her name tag read, Patricia. "Excuse me," Marcus said. "I need to confirm our seats. Webb, Marcus Webb and Lily Webb." Patricia didn't look up. "ID and confirmation number." Marcus handed over his driver's license and the printed email. She glanced at them, typed something, then frowned. "You're in 12F and 12E, back of the plane." "That's fine. Boarding starts in 45 minutes, Zone 4. "Thank you." He started to turn away, but Patricia's voice stopped him. "Sir?" Marcus looked back. She was studying him now, her expression unreadable. "You have military ID." "I do." He pulled his VA card from his wallet. Patricia examined it, then typed something into her computer. Her frown deepened. "Air Force, Crew Chief, 388th Fighter Wing." "Yes, ma'am." She looked at him differently then. Something shifted behind her eyes. "What was your call sign?" Marcus felt a strange chill run down his spine. Nobody had asked him that question in years. "Shadow," he said quietly. "They called me Shadow." Patricia nodded slowly. "Have a good flight, Mr. Webb." She handed back his documents, but her eyes lingered on him a moment longer than necessary. Marcus walked back to Lily with an uneasy feeling in his chest. It was probably nothing. Just a random question. Just curiosity. But something about the way she'd looked at him stayed with Marcus as he sat down beside his daughter. "Daddy, can I have a snack now?" Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. He reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a granola bar, one of 6 he'd bought at the dollar store yesterday. "Here you go, sweetheart." "Thank you." She unwrapped it carefully, trying not to break any pieces. She'd learned to make food last. Another lesson no 6-year-old should have to know. Marcus watched her eat, his own stomach growling. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. The last of the bread had gone to Lily's sandwich. The eggs were for her breakfast. He'd told her he wasn't hungry. "Mr. Webb." Marcus looked up. A woman stood before him, tall, composed, maybe mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a dark blazer over a simple blouse, and something about her posture screamed military, even though she was in civilian clothes. "Yes, I'm Margaret Chen." She didn't extend her hand. "Mind if I sit?" She gestured to the empty seat beside him without waiting for an answer. "I don't mean to intrude." She continued, settling into the chair. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with the gate agent." Marcus's guard went up. "What about it?" "Shadow." Margaret's voice dropped lower. "From the 3 and 88th. You were part of the team that handled the Block 4 integration in 16, weren't you?" Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Nobody outside the Air Force should know those details. "Who are you?" "Retired now, Lieutenant Colonel. I spent 20 years in logistics at Hill." "I don't remember you." "No reason you would. I was in a different building." She paused. "But I remember you." Everyone did. Marcus said nothing. He pulled Lily a little closer. Margaret leaned forward. "You were the one who caught the fuel line defect, weren't you? The one that would have taken down 3 jets?" "I just did my job." "Your job saved lives. Any tech would have caught it." "But they didn't. You did." Margaret studied him for a long moment. "What happened, Shadow? Why did you leave?" Marcus looked away. Through the terminal windows, he could see planes taxiing on the runway, their wings catching the morning light. "Life happened," he said finally. "My wife got sick. Someone had to take care of my daughter. The Air Force doesn't wait for you to sort out your personal problems. So you took a hardship discharge." "Yes. And now," Marcus laughed bitterly, "now I weld pipes for $12 an hour, when there's work." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. "I'm consulting now. Defense contractors. Good people who need experienced crew chiefs." She held out the card. "When you get to Portland, give me a call." Marcus looked at the card, but didn't take it. "I'm not looking for charity. This isn't charity. This is me recognizing talent when I see it." She placed the card on the armrest between them. "Your choice." She stood and straightened her blazer. "It was good to meet you, Shadow. Take care of that little girl." She walked away before Marcus could respond. He stared at the business card for a long moment, then slipped it into his pocket. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Who was that lady daddy?" "Just someone I used to know." "She called you Shadow, like a superhero name." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Something like that." Now boarding Zone 1 for Flight 847 to Portland. The announcement cut through the terminal noise. First-class passengers rose from their seats. Business travelers with platinum cards. People who could afford to board early and drink champagne before takeoff. Marcus watched them file past. A man in a $3,000 suit. A woman dripping with jewelry. A young executive talking loudly on his phone about quarterly projections and market shares. None of them glanced at Marcus. He was furniture. Background. Invisible. Zone 2 now boarding. More passengers. Families with young children. Senior citizens with priority access. Marcus checked their tickets again. Zone 4. The last to board. The cheapest seats on the plane. "Daddy, when do we go?" "Soon, sweetheart." A man bumped into Marcus as he passed. Tall, heavyset, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Marcus's car. He wore a Rolex and the impatient scowl of someone who'd never been told no in his life. "Excuse me," Marcus said automatically. The man didn't acknowledge him, didn't even slow down. Lily frowned. That was rude. It's okay, sweetheart. No, it wasn't. He should say sorry. Some people are in a hurry. Still rude. Marcus suppressed a smile. She had her mother's fire, that stubborn sense of right and wrong that Sarah had carried like a shield. Zone 3 now boarding. The crowd thinned. More passengers filed through the gate. Soon the waiting area was nearly empty. Zone 4 final boarding call for Flight 847 to Portland. Marcus stood and gathered the duffel bag. Ready. Lily hopped off her seat and grabbed his hand. Ready. They walked to the gate together. The agent scanned their tickets without looking up. Seats 12E and 12F, down the aisle all the way back. Thank you. The jetway stretched before them, a narrow tunnel leading to the plane. Lily's grip tightened on his hand. Daddy, what if I don't like flying? You'll love it, I promise. What if I get scared? Then I'll hold your hand, just like now. She smiled up at him, and Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. This little girl. This perfect, beautiful, resilient little girl. She was the only reason he got up in the morning. The only reason he hadn't given up after Sarah died. Whatever happened in Portland, whatever came next, he would make sure she was okay. He would give her a better life than this. He had to. The plane was already nearly full when they stepped inside. A flight attendant greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Welcome aboard. Seats in the back. 12E and F. Straight down the aisle. Marcus navigated past the first-class cabin. Leather seats, champagne glasses, passengers who looked like they belonged in magazine ads. Then coach. Cramped rows, tight spaces, the democratization of discomfort. He spotted their row near the back, window and middle seat. The aisle seat was already occupied by a woman in her 60s, reading glasses perched on her nose, absorbed in a thick novel. Excuse me, Marcus said. We're in the 2 seats beside you. The woman looked up, taking in Marcus's worn appearance and Lily's wide eyes. Her expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. She stood and stepped into the aisle, making no effort to help as Marcus struggled with the duffel bag. He hoisted it into the overhead compartment, muscles straining. His back protested. He'd thrown it out last month loading steel beams at the shop, and it had never fully healed. There you go, sweetheart. He guided Lily into the window seat and slid in beside her. All settled. The woman reclaimed her aisle seat without a word. She returned to her book, immediately building an invisible wall between them. Lily pressed her face to the window. Daddy, look, I can see other planes. That's right. Those are all going to different places. Where? Everywhere. New York, Los Angeles, maybe even other countries. Wow. She turned to him with shining eyes. Someday, can we go everywhere? Marcus brushed a curl from her forehead. Someday, sweetheart. I promise. The promise tasted like ash in his mouth. He'd made so many promises. To Sarah, that he'd take care of Lily. To Lily, that everything would be okay. To himself, that he'd find a way out of this hole he'd fallen into. How many of those promises could he actually keep? Oh. The plane filled up around them. A young couple arguing quietly about whether they'd packed everything. A mother trying to calm a crying infant. Teenagers with headphones already tuned out from the world. And then him. The man from the gate. The one with the Rolex and the briefcase. He stopped in the aisle right beside Marcus's row. You're in my seat. Marcus looked up. I'm sorry. My seat, 12C. You're blocking me. The woman with the novel hadn't moved. She was in 12C, but she was also clearly the type who expected others to adjust to her convenience. I think the lady beside me is in 12C, Marcus said carefully. We're in E and F. The man's face reddened. I don't care about the letter. I need to get to my seat. The woman finally looked up. Oh, for heaven's sake. She stood with an exaggerated sigh and stepped into the aisle. The man pushed past her without thanks and dropped into the aisle seat. His elbow immediately invaded Marcus's space. "Move over," he said, not looking at Marcus. "I'm as far over as I can get." "Then tell your kid to move." Something cold and hard settled in Marcus's chest. "She's in the window seat. There's nowhere for her to go." "This is ridiculous." The man jabbed the call button. "I paid good money for this flight." A flight attendant appeared professionally pleasant. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yeah, you can help me. I'm cramped in here. These people are taking up too much room." The flight attendant looked at Marcus, then at Lily, who had shrunk against the window with frightened eyes. Her expression flickered with something that might have been sympathy. "I'm sorry, sir, but these passengers are in their assigned seats. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable if—" "I don't want comfortable. I want space." The man glared at Marcus. "Can't you do something about this?" Marcus met his eyes. He felt the old training kick in the discipline drilled into him during 12 years of military service. "Stay calm. Don't escalate. Take the high road." "We're fine," Marcus said quietly. "We're not bothering anyone." "You're bothering me." "I'm sorry you feel that way." The man's lip curled. "Sorry I feel that way. Listen, pal, I don't know what bus station you crawled in from, but some of us have important business waiting in Portland." Lily's hand found Marcus's and squeezed tight. He could feel her trembling. "Sir." The flight attendant's voice hardened. "I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice." "I'll lower my voice when this guy admits he doesn't belong in first class." "This is coach, sir." "Same difference." The man waved dismissively. "Look at him. Look at those boots. Probably hasn't paid taxes in years." The words hit like punches. Marcus had heard worse during his life, but never in front of Lily. Never while she was watching, learning, absorbing every moment. "Daddy," she whispered. "Why is he so mean?" Marcus squeezed her hand back. "It's okay, sweetheart. Some people are just having bad days." "He's not having a bad day. He's being a bully." The man heard her. His face went purple. "A bully? Did that kid just call me a—" "She's 6 years old." Marcus's voice cut through like a blade. Quiet, controlled, dangerous. "And she's right." The plane went silent. Everyone in the surrounding rows was watching now. The flight attendant stood frozen. The man sputtered. "How dare you?" "I dare because you're scaring my daughter." Marcus didn't raise his voice, but something in his tone made the man lean back. "I don't care what you think of me, but you will not speak to her. You will not look at her. And you will sit there quietly for the next 4 hours, or I promise you, the rest of this flight will feel very, very long." The man's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Marcus held his gaze for 5 full seconds. Then he turned to Lily and smiled gently. "Want me to show you how the tray table works?" The rest of boarding passed in tense silence. The man in 12C didn't say another word. He pulled out his laptop and typed furiously, his jaw clenched so tight Marcus could see the muscles jumping. The flight attendant brought Lily a small bag of pretzels and a cup of juice compliments of the crew. She winked at Marcus as she handed them over. "Your daughter is very brave. She gets it from her mother. And her father too, I think." Marcus didn't respond, but he felt a warmth spread through his chest. Small kindnesses. They mattered more than people knew. Lily munched on her pretzels happily, the confrontation already fading from her mind. Children were resilient that way. They bounced back. They forgave. Adults weren't as lucky. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 847 non-stop service to Portland. We're currently number 3 for takeoff, so we should be airborne in just a few minutes. Flight time today is approximately 4 hours and 15 minutes. Weather looks good along our route, though we may experience some light turbulence over the Rockies. We'll do our best to keep it smooth. On behalf of the entire crew, thank you for flying with us today." The engines hummed as the plane taxied toward the runway. Lily pressed her nose to the window again. Daddy, we're moving. That's right. Soon we'll be going really fast. Faster than the lightning planes. Marcus chuckled. Not quite that fast, but fast enough. The plane turned onto the runway and paused. Outside, the morning sun was climbing higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Okay, sweetheart. Here we go. The engines roared. The plane surged forward. Lily grabbed Marcus's hand and squeezed as the G-forces pushed them back into their seats. Daddy, it's okay. This is the best part. The world outside became a blur. Faster. Faster. And then, with a gentle lift, the ground fell away. They were flying. Lily gasped as Chicago shrank beneath them. The buildings became toys. The cars became ants. The lake stretched out like an infinite blue mirror. It's beautiful, she breathed. Marcus watched her face illuminated by wonder. In that moment, all the struggles, all the hardships, all the invisible walls he'd been fighting against, none of it mattered. His daughter was happy. And somewhere deep in his chest, a tiny flame of hope flickered to life. Maybe Portland would be different. Maybe Danny's job would work out. Maybe this flight was the beginning of something new. He didn't know yet that in less than 3 hours, 2 F-35 pilots would appear outside his window. He didn't know that a secret from his past was about to resurface. He didn't know that before this day ended, his entire life would change. All Marcus Webb knew in that moment was that he was flying, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. The seatbelt sign clicked off with a soft chime. Lily immediately unbuckled and twisted in her seat to look out the window again. Below them, the patchwork of farmland stretched endlessly, squares of brown and green stitched together like a quilt. Daddy, are those tiny houses? Farm, sweetheart, people grow food down there. For us. For everyone. She pressed her palm against the cold glass. I want to live on a farm someday, with horses, and chickens, and a big red barn. Maybe we will. Promise. Marcus hesitated. Another promise. Another dream he might not be able to deliver. I promise we'll try. Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. She pulled out her toy jet and began flying it in small circles, making quiet whooshing sounds under her breath. The man in 12C hadn't moved since takeoff. His laptop screen glowed with spreadsheets and emails, his fingers punching the keys with unnecessary force. He hadn't looked at Marcus or Lily once. The silent treatment suited Marcus just fine. A different flight attendant approached their row. Younger than the first one, maybe late 20s with kind eyes and a genuine smile. How are we doing back here? Can I get you anything to drink? Just water, please, Marcus said, and maybe some apple juice for my daughter. Of course. She glanced at Lily's toy. That's a beautiful plane. Did you make it? Lily's face lit up. My daddy made it. He used to fix real planes, big ones, really, really fast ones. The attendant's eyebrows rose. Is that so? She exaggerates, Marcus said quickly. No, I don't. Lily held up the toy proudly. Tell her daddy. Tell her about the lightning planes. The attendant leaned closer, genuinely interested. Lightning planes. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. F-35s. I was a crew chief, long time ago. Air Force. Yes, ma'am. My brother's Air Force, stationed at Nellis. She extended her hand. I'm Rachel. Marcus shook it. Marcus, and this is Lily. Hi, Lily. I love your plane. Rachel straightened up. I'll get those drinks right away. And Marcus? Thank you for your service. She walked away before he could respond. Marcus watched her go, feeling the familiar discomfort that came whenever anyone thanked him for his service. He never knew what to say. Your welcome felt wrong. Just doing my job sounded dismissive, so he usually said nothing at all. Daddy, why do people always say that? Say what? Thank you for your service. Marcus thought about it. Because I was a soldier, sweetheart. I helped protect our country. Did you fight bad guys? Not exactly. I made sure the planes worked so the pilots could do their jobs. So you helped the pilots fight bad guys? I suppose so. Lily nodded seriously. That's important. Very important. You think so? Mommy said so. She said you were the most important person nobody ever saw. Marcus's breath caught. Sarah had said that. He remembered the exact moment. They'd been sitting on the porch of their small house in Utah, watching the sunset, Lily asleep in her crib inside. Sarah had taken his hand and said those words, and he'd felt for one perfect moment like he mattered. Your mommy was a smart woman. I know. Lily returned to her toy jet. I miss her. Me too, sweetheart. Every single day. Rachel returned with their drinks. She handed the apple juice to Lily with a warm smile, then gave Marcus his water along with something else. A small bag of cookies. On the house, she whispered. For the hero in 12F. She was gone before Marcus could protest. He stared at the cookies, a lump forming in his throat. Small kindnesses. They kept catching him off guard. Lily noticed the cookies immediately. Can I have one? You just had pretzels. Please, just one. Marcus couldn't say no to those eyes. He never could. One. And save the rest for later. She grabbed a cookie and bit into it with pure joy. Crumbs scattered across her lap, and she giggled. It's chocolate chip, my favorite. I know, sweetheart. The man in 12C made a disgusted sound. Marcus ignored him. Let the man stew in his bitterness. Marcus had cookies, a happy daughter, and 4 hours of peace ahead. For now, that was enough. 2 hours into the flight, Lily fell asleep. Her head rested against Marcus's shoulder, her breathing slow and steady. The toy jet lay clutched in her small fist, even in dreams. Marcus stared out the window past her sleeping form. They were above the clouds now, an endless ocean of white stretching to every horizon. The sun blazed overhead, turning the cloud tops into rolling hills of gold. It reminded him of his first flight. He'd been 18, fresh out of basic training, heading to tech school in Texas. He'd pressed his face to the window, just like Lily, marveling at the world below. That boy had been so full of hope, so certain that the future held nothing but promise. What would that boy think if he could see Marcus now? Broke, alone, clinging to a job offer from his brother like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. Excuse me. The voice was soft, hesitant. Marcus turned. An elderly man stood in the aisle leaning on a cane. He wore a faded cap with the words, Korea Veteran, embroidered across the front. I don't mean to bother you, the man said, but I couldn't help overhearing earlier. You were Air Force? Yes, sir. What years? 2004 to 2016. The old man's eyes crinkled. I was Army, 51 to 53, Korea. Marcus felt a swell of respect. Thank you for your service, sir. Same to you, son. The man glanced at Lily. Beautiful daughter. She's my whole world. I can see that. The old man hesitated. Mind if I tell you something? Of course not. I came back from Korea with nothing. No money, no job, no prospects. My wife had left me while I was overseas. My family didn't understand what I'd been through. I spent 10 years feeling sorry for myself. 10 years I'll never get back. Marcus said nothing, but his chest tightened. Then one day I woke up and realized something. The uniform doesn't make the man. The man makes the uniform. Whatever we did over there, whatever sacrifices we made, they matter. But they don't define us. We define ourselves. Every single day with every choice we make. The old man placed a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. You've got a long road ahead, son. I can see it in your eyes. But you're not alone. You've got that little girl. And somewhere out there, people remember what you did. People whose lives you touched without even knowing it. Marcus swallowed hard. How do you know? Because that's how it works. We plant seeds we never see grow. We save lives we never hear about again. But the seeds grow anyway. And someday, when you least expect it, they come back to find you. The old man patted Marcus's shoulder and shuffled back toward his seat. Marcus watched him go, the words echoing in his mind. Seeds we never see grow. He thought about the faces of the pilots he'd worked with. Young men and women who trusted him with their lives every time they strapped into a cockpit. He wondered where they were now, what they'd become. Did any of them remember him? Did any of them know what had happened to the crew chief they'd called Shadow? Probably not. Life moved on. People forgot. That was the natural order of things. Marcus closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat. Maybe the old man was right. Maybe seeds grew in places you couldn't see. But right now, all Marcus could see was the long road ahead. And it looked very, very dark. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Marcus opened his eyes. He hadn't realized he'd dozed off. Lily still slept against his shoulder, undisturbed. We've got some interesting news from air traffic control. We're about to pass through an active military training zone. If you look out the right side of the aircraft in the next few minutes, you might catch a glimpse of some fighter jets conducting exercises. Nothing to be concerned about. Just thought you'd enjoy the view. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers on the right side pressed against their windows, phones ready. Marcus felt a strange sensation in his chest. Military training zone, fighter jets. It had been years since he'd been anywhere near that world. Daddy? Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? The captain said we might see some military planes. Her eyes went wide. Like your planes. Maybe. Let's watch. She scrambled upright, pressing her face to the window. Marcus leaned closer, scanning the empty sky. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Lily gasped. Daddy! Look, Two shapes emerged from behind the clouds. Sleek, powerful, unmistakable. F-35 Lightning IIs. They flew in perfect formation, maybe 500 meters off the wing of the commercial jet. The sun glinted off their surfaces, turning them into streaks of silver fire. Marcus's breath stopped. He knew those planes. Not these specific aircraft, but the design, the profile, the way they cut through the air like knives through silk. He'd spent 12 years of his life with his hands inside engines like those. He'd bled for them, sweated for them, loved them in a way civilians could never understand. They're beautiful, Lily whispered. Yes, Marcus managed. They are. The jets held their position, matching the commercial flight speed, with casual precision. Passengers throughout the cabin were taking photos, exclaiming in excitement. But something was wrong. Fighter jets didn't just cruise alongside commercial aircraft. Not like this. Not for this long. Training exercises happened in designated areas away from civilian traffic. This was something else. Mr. Webb. Marcus turned. Rachel stood in the aisle, but she wasn't alone. A woman stood beside her. Tall, poised, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes. She wore a navy blazer with a pin on the lapel, an Air Force pin. Mr. Webb, Rachel said, this is Colonel Patricia Hayes. She'd like to speak with you. Marcus's heart began to pound. Colonel? The woman stepped forward. Her expression was unreadable, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Respect. Mr. Webb. Or should I say Shadow? The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Nobody had called him that since he'd left the service. Nobody except the woman at the gate, and he'd dismissed that as coincidence. This was not coincidence. How do you know that name? I know a lot of things about you, Chief Webb. The colonel glanced toward the window where the F-35s still held formation. And so do they. Marcus followed her gaze. The jets hadn't moved. They were holding position like an honor guard. I don't understand. May I sit? The man in 12C finally looked up from his laptop, his face twisted with annoyance. Excuse me, we're in the middle of... Sir. Colonel Hayes's voice could have frozen lava. Move. The man opened his mouth to argue, saw something in her eyes, and thought better of it. He unbuckled his seatbelt and retreated toward the back of the plane without another word. Colonel Hayes slid into the vacated seat. Daddy... Lily's voice was small. What's going on? I don't know, sweetheart. Marcus put his arm around her. But it's okay. Everything's okay. He hoped he wasn't lying. Colonel Hayes leaned closer, lowering her voice. Chief Webb, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Those pilots out there, they requested this route specifically. They've been tracking this flight since Chicago. Why? Because of you. Marcus shook his head. That's impossible. Nobody knows I'm on this plane. Patricia Chen knew, the gate agent in Chicago. She recognized your name and your call sign. She made a call. Marcus remembered the woman at the counter, the way she'd looked at him, the questions about his military ID. Patricia's husband is General David Chen. He commands the 388th Fighter Wing, your old unit. The words hit Marcus like a series of punches. Patricia Chen, the gate agent, married to the commanding general of his former squadron. She called her husband, Colonel Hayes continued. He made some calls of his own, and within an hour every pilot who ever served with you knew you were on this flight. But why would they care? I've been gone for years. Chief Webb. The colonel's voice softened. Do you remember what happened on September 14th, 2015? The date slammed into Marcus's memory like a freight train. September 14th, 2015. The day everything changed. I remember, he whispered. Then you remember what you did. Marcus closed his eyes. The memories came flooding back. The screech of alarms, the smell of jet fuel, the impossible choice. 3 aircraft on the runway, 3 pilots in their cockpits, and a fuel line defect that nobody else had caught, a defect that would have caused catastrophic engine failure within seconds of takeoff. He'd been the only one who spotted it. During a routine pre-flight check, he'd noticed something wrong. A hairline crack. A microscopic flaw. The kind of thing that should have been invisible. But Marcus had seen it. He'd thrown himself in front of the lead aircraft, arms spread wide, screaming for them to abort. The pilots had thought he'd gone insane. Air traffic control had threatened to have him arrested. But he'd refused to move. And when they finally checked the fuel line, they found the defect. The crack that would have killed 3 pilots and destroyed millions of dollars in equipment. Marcus had saved them. And then he'd had a breakdown. The stress, the pressure, the weight of what almost happened, it had crushed him. He'd spent 3 months in a military hospital diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. When he finally recovered, Sarah was sick, and his world had narrowed to a single point: taking care of his family. He'd never told anyone the full story, not even Sarah. He'd buried it so deep that sometimes he forgot it had happened at all. How do you know about that? He asked. Everyone knows Chief Webb. Maybe not the public, but inside the Air Force, you're a legend. I'm not a legend. I'm a mechanic who had a panic attack. You're a hero who saved 3 lives and then walked away before anyone could thank you. Marcus opened his eyes. The F-35s still held formation outside the window, silent sentinels in the sky. Those pilots out there, Colonel Hayes said. One of them is Captain Daniel Reyes. The name cut through Marcus like a blade. Daniel Reyes, the youngest pilot in the squadron, 23 years old, cocky, talented, terrified beneath the bravado. He'd been in the lead aircraft that day, the one Marcus had stepped in front of. Danny's a captain now. One of the best in the fleet. He credits you with his career, his life. Colonel Hayes reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He asked me to give you this. Marcus took the paper with trembling hands. He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was neat, precise. Military precision. Chief Webb. I've waited 9 years to say this. You saved my life. Not just on the runway, but every day before that. You taught me that the most important person in any squadron isn't the one who flies. It's the one who makes sure everyone comes home. I heard you've been struggling. I heard life hasn't been kind since you left us. That's not right. That's not fair. Today we wanted to show you something. We wanted you to see that you're not forgotten. You're not invisible. You matter. Look out your window, Chief. The sky is saluting you. And so am I. With respect and gratitude. Captain Daniel Reyes. Call sign Phoenix. Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. Tears blurred his vision. Daddy. Lily's voice was worried now. Daddy, why are you crying? He couldn't answer. He couldn't speak. Colonel Hayes put a gentle hand on his arm. Look outside, Chief Webb. Marcus turned to the window. The two F-35s had changed position. They'd pulled closer to the commercial jet, close enough that he could see the pilots clearly through their canopies. And then, in perfect synchronization, both pilots raised their right hands. A salute. 35,000 feet above the earth, two of the most advanced fighter pilots in the world were saluting a broken man in seat 12F. Marcus pressed his palm against the window. His throat was too tight to speak. His chest felt like it might explode. But somewhere deep inside, in a place he'd thought was dead, something stirred. A spark. A flame. Hope. Daddy! Lily's small hand found his. They're waving at you. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off the jets. Yeah, sweetheart, he managed to whisper. They are. The jets held their salute for 10 long seconds. Then slowly they lowered their hands and tilted their wings in a final gesture of respect. And then they were gone. Banking away into the clouds, disappearing into the endless blue. But Marcus didn't move. He stayed frozen at the window, his hand pressed against the glass, watching the empty sky where they had been. The cabin had gone completely silent. Every passenger, every flight attendant, every person on Flight 847 was staring at him. And for the first time in years, Marcus Webb didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. The silence lasted only a moment. Then the cabin erupted. Applause broke out from somewhere near the front, spreading backward like a wave. Passengers turned in their seats, craning their necks to see the man in 12F. Phones came up, capturing the moment. Whispers became murmurs, became open exclamations. Who is he? Did you see that the jets actually saluted him? He must be somebody important. Marcus sat frozen, overwhelmed. The applause washed over him like a tide he couldn't stop. His hand was still pressed against the window, even though the jets were long gone. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, everyone's clapping for you. He couldn't respond. His throat had closed completely. Colonel Hayes stood and faced the cabin, raising her hand for quiet. The applause slowly died down, replaced by expectant silence. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying easily through the aircraft. My name is Colonel Patricia Hayes, United States Air Force. The man you just saw honored by those fighter pilots is Chief Master Sergeant Marcus Webb, retired. 9 years ago, he saved the lives of 3 pilots by spotting a critical defect that everyone else missed. He put himself between those aircraft and certain death. Today, the Air Force wanted to say thank you. The applause returned louder than before. Marcus felt hands on his shoulders. Passengers reaching across seats to touch him to thank him. Strangers who'd ignored him an hour ago now looked at him with tears in their eyes. Thank you for your service. God bless you, sir. You're a hero. The words came from everywhere. Marcus couldn't process them. He sat rigid, clutching Lily's hand, feeling like he was drowning in attention he'd never asked for. Rachel appeared at his side, her eyes wet. Mr. Webb, can I get you anything water? Something stronger. I'm fine, he managed. I need a minute. Of course. She touched his arm gently. Take all the time you need. The applause finally faded. Passengers returned to their seats, though many continued to glance back at 12F. The cabin hummed with excited conversation. Marcus stared at the letter still clutched in his hand. Captain Daniel Reyes. Phoenix. The kid he'd trained. The life he'd saved. Daddy? Lily's voice was small and uncertain. Are you okay? He looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, worried, searching his face for reassurance. I'm okay, sweetheart. You're crying. He touched his cheek and found it wet. He hadn't even noticed. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. Are you happy? Marcus considered the question. Was he happy? He didn't know anymore. He'd forgotten what happiness felt like. For so long, survival had been his only goal. Getting through each day, paying each bill, making sure Lily had food and clothes and a roof over her head. But this feeling in his chest, this warmth spreading through his body, maybe this was what happiness felt like. Maybe this was what it meant to be seen. Yeah, sweetheart, he whispered. I think I am. Colonel Hayes returned to her seat beside him. The man with the Rolex hadn't come back. Marcus didn't care where he'd gone. Chief Webb, she said quietly, I know this is a lot to take in, but there's more you should know. More. The network, we call it. The informal connection between everyone who's served. When Patricia Chen identified you at the gate, word spread fast. Within an hour, pilots across 3 bases knew you were on this flight. I don't understand why anyone would care. I've been out for years. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. Her voice sharpened. You were never nobody. The men and women who flew those jets, they remember everything. They remember who kept them safe, who stayed up all night fixing problems, who treated every aircraft like a life depended on it, because a life did depend on it. Marcus shook his head. I just did my job. And your job saved people. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many mechanics just punch the clock and go home? You were different. Everyone knew it. Everyone talked about it. I had to be different. Those pilots trusted me. Exactly. Colonel Hayes leaned closer. That's what made you special. You understood the responsibility. You felt it in your bones. And when it mattered most, when everyone else missed the defect, you saw it. You stopped those planes. The memory surged back, vivid and raw. September 14th, 2015. 05:47 hours. Hill Air Force Base, Utah. Marcus had been running late that morning. Lily had been sick the night before, and Sarah was exhausted from nursing her through the fever. He'd barely slept, but he'd dragged himself to the flight line anyway, because the squadron had a critical exercise scheduled. 3 F-35s were lined up on the runway, engines warming. The pilots were already in their cockpits, running through pre-flight checklists. In 30 minutes, they'd be airborne. Marcus was supposed to sign off on the maintenance logs and go home. His shift had ended 2 hours earlier, but something made him stop. Something made him walk the line one more time. He'd been checking the second aircraft when he saw it. A hairline crack in the fuel coupling. So small it was almost invisible. So small that the automated inspection systems had missed it. So small that 3 previous technicians had walked right past it. But Marcus saw it. And he knew with absolute certainty what would happen if those planes took off. The crack would widen under pressure. Fuel would leak into the hot engine housing. And somewhere over the Utah desert, 3 pilots would become 3 fireballs. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He just ran. He threw himself in front of the lead aircraft, arms spread wide, screaming at the top of his lungs. Stop! Stop! Abort! Abort! The pilots thought he'd lost his mind. Air traffic control ordered security to remove him. His commanding officer threatened him with court-martial, but Marcus refused to move. He stood on that runway for 17 minutes, blocking the aircraft with his body, until someone finally agreed to check the fuel coupling. And when they found the crack, when they realized how close they'd come to catastrophe, everything changed. Marcus was hailed as a hero. Commendations poured in. The Air Force wanted to give him a medal, put him on television, make him the face of maintenance excellence. But Marcus couldn't handle it. The stress, the attention, the crushing weight of what almost happened, it broke something inside him. He started having panic attacks, nightmares. He couldn't look at an aircraft without seeing fireballs. 3 weeks after the incident, he collapsed on the flight line. They found him curled in a ball, sobbing, unable to move. PTSD, they said. Anxiety disorder. Medical discharge recommended. Marcus spent 3 months in the hospital. When he finally emerged, Sarah was dying and his military career was over. He'd walked away from everything. The Air Force, the squadron, the brotherhood. He'd buried the memory so deep that sometimes he convinced himself it had never happened. But it had happened, and now 9 years later it had found him again. Chief Webb. Colonel Hayes's voice pulled him back to the present. He realized he'd been silent for several minutes, lost in the past. "Sorry," he said. "I was somewhere else. I know where you were. September 14th. How did you know about it? The real story, I mean, not the official version." "Because I was there." Colonel Hayes's voice dropped. "I was a major then, stationed at Hill. I was in the control tower when you ran onto that runway." Marcus stared at her. "You were there." "I was the one who finally ordered the inspection. After you'd been standing there for 15 minutes screaming that something was wrong. Everyone thought you'd cracked, but something in your voice made me believe you. I don't remember you. You wouldn't. You were in shock by the time we got you off the runway, and then you were in the hospital, and by the time you got out..." She trailed off. "You disappeared. Nobody knew what happened to you. The Air Force lost track. I didn't want to be found." "I understand. But Chief Webb, you need to understand something too. What you did that day, it didn't just save 3 pilots. It changed the entire inspection protocol for the F-35 program. They redesigned the fuel coupling based on what you found. They added new detection systems. Every aircraft in the fleet is safer because of you." Marcus felt the cabin spinning around him. "I didn't know that. How could you? You left before the investigation was complete. But I'm telling you now, you saved lives that day, and you've been saving lives ever since. Every pilot who flies an F-35 owes you a debt." Lily had been listening quietly, her small face scrunched in concentration. "Daddy," she said, "I don't understand. What happened?" Marcus looked at his daughter. He'd never told her the full story. He'd never told anyone. "A long time ago, sweetheart, Daddy found something wrong with a plane, and I stopped the pilots from flying it. Because it was broken." "Yes, it was broken in a way that could have hurt people." "So you fixed it?" "I didn't fix it. I just found it. Other people fixed it." Lily considered this. "But you found it first, so you saved them." "I suppose so." "That's why the plane saluted you." "Yes, sweetheart. That's why." She nodded solemnly. "I'm proud of you, Daddy." 4 words. Simple words. But they hit Marcus harder than anything else that had happened on this flight. He pulled Lily into his arms and held her tight, not caring who was watching. "Thank you, sweetheart," he whispered. "Thank you." The next hour passed in a blur. Passengers kept approaching Marcus's seat. Some wanted to shake his hand. Others just wanted to say thank you. A woman in her 70s told him her grandson was an F-35 pilot at Luke Air Force Base. A young man said his father had served in the Gulf War, and he understood what sacrifice meant. A little boy asked if Marcus could sign his napkin. Marcus accommodated them all, though he felt increasingly overwhelmed. He wasn't used to attention. He'd spent years perfecting the art of invisibility. Being seen, being acknowledged, being celebrated, it felt foreign and uncomfortable. But it also felt right. Somewhere deep inside, in a place he'd tried to kill, a voice whispered that maybe he deserved this. Maybe he wasn't the failure he'd convinced himself he was. Maybe the old man on the bus had been right. Maybe seeds grew in places you couldn't see. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The announcement cut through the cabin noise. Passengers returned to their seats. We'll be beginning our descent into Portland in approximately 30 minutes. Weather is clear, temperature is a pleasant 62 degrees. But before we start our approach, I'd like to take a moment to address something unusual that happened today. Marcus tensed. What now? Many of you witnessed the F-35 escort earlier in the flight. I've since learned the reason for it. We have a genuine American hero on board today. Chief Master Sergeant Marcus Webb, seated in 12F, saved 3 lives during his service to our country. The Air Force wanted to honor him, and frankly, so do I. The captain paused. Chief Webb, on behalf of the entire crew and everyone at this airline, thank you for your service and your sacrifice. It's an honor to have you on our aircraft. The applause that followed was deafening. Marcus sat motionless, tears streaming down his face. Lily clapped enthusiastically beside him, beaming with pride. "That's my daddy," she announced to everyone around her. "That's my daddy." Rachel appeared with a box of tissues. She was crying too. "I think the whole plane is crying," she said, laughing through her tears. "You've turned us all into emotional wrecks." "I'm sorry." "Don't you dare apologize." She pressed the tissues into his hand. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on a flight. Usually it's just people complaining about legroom." Colonel Hayes touched his shoulder. "How are you holding up, Chief?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "This is a lot." "I understand. But there's one more thing I need to tell you." "What?" "When we land, there's going to be a reception waiting." Marcus's stomach dropped. "A reception?" "Captain Ray has arranged it. He's flying to Portland as we speak. He wants to meet you in person. And he's not coming alone." "What do you mean?" "The pilots from that day, the 3 you saved. 2 of them are still active duty. The 3rd retired last year. They're all converging on Portland." Marcus shook his head. "That's not necessary. I don't need—" "It's not about what you need, Chief Webb. It's about what they need. You gave them their lives. They've spent 9 years wondering what happened to the man who saved them. This is their chance to say thank you. Please don't take that from them." Marcus looked at Lily. She was watching him with those big, serious eyes. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we meet Daddy's old friends?" "Yes." She bounced in her seat. "I want to meet the pilots." Colonel Hayes smiled. "I think that settles it." The plane began its descent. Marcus watched the clouds fall away below them, revealing the green expanse of the Pacific Northwest. Forests and rivers, mountains in the distance, a new landscape, a new beginning. He thought about Danny, about the scared young pilot who'd sat in that cockpit 9 years ago, waiting for takeoff, unaware that death was hiding in a hairline crack. What had those 9 years been like for him? Had he thought about Marcus? Had he wondered where his crew chief had gone? The letter said he'd been waiting to say thank you. 9 years of waiting. Marcus felt a wave of shame wash over him. He'd been so focused on his own pain, his own struggles, that he'd never considered what his disappearance might have meant to others. He'd assumed no one cared. He'd convinced himself he was forgettable. But he wasn't forgettable. He'd mattered. He still mattered. "Daddy, look!" Lily pointed out the window. The city of Portland sprawled below them, a patchwork of buildings and bridges spanning a wide river. "Is that where Uncle Danny lives?" "Near here. He's going to pick us up at the airport." "Is he nice?" "Very nice. You'll like him." "Will he like me?" "He'll love you, sweetheart. Everyone loves you." The plane banked, lining up with the runway. Marcus gripped the armrest as the ground rushed up to meet them. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. In a few minutes, he'd walk off this plane and into a new life. But he wouldn't be walking alone. The wheels touched down with a gentle bump. Passengers stirred, gathering belongings, checking phones. The ordinary routine of arrival. But for Marcus, nothing felt ordinary. Colonel Hayes stood as the plane taxied to the gate. "Chief Webb, I'm going to deplane first and coordinate the reception. Just follow Rachel when you're ready. She'll take you to the right place. Colonel. Yes. Why did you do this? Why did you come on this flight? She smiled, and for the first time her professional mask slipped. Behind it, Marcus saw genuine emotion. Because I owed you, Chief Webb. That day on the runway when everyone thought you'd lost your mind, I almost let security drag you away. I almost ignored you. If I had 3 pilots would be dead, and I'd have to live with that forever. But you didn't. You ordered the inspection. Only because you refused to move. Only because you believed in what you saw even when no one else did. She reached out and clasped his hand. You taught me something that day. You taught me that the bravest thing a person can do is trust themselves even when the whole world says they're wrong. She released his hand and straightened her blazer. Welcome to Portland, Chief Webb. Your brothers and sisters are waiting. She walked up the aisle and disappeared through the forward door. Marcus sat motionless, her words echoing in his mind. Trust yourself, even when the whole world says you're wrong. He'd stopped trusting himself years ago. Somewhere between the hospital and Sarah's funeral, between the mounting bills and the endless rejections, he'd lost faith in his own judgment. He'd started believing the world's assessment of him. A failure, a nobody, invisible. But the world had been wrong, and maybe, just maybe, he was ready to trust himself again. Daddy! Lily tugged at his sleeve. Everyone's leaving. Are we going to... Marcus looked around. The cabin was nearly empty. Passengers filed past many, pausing to smile at him, to nod, to offer one last word of thanks. The man with the Rolex was nowhere to be seen. He must have been first off the plane, fleeing from the man he'd tried to humiliate. Rachel appeared at their row. Mr. Webb, are you ready? Marcus took a deep breath. He stood, his legs unsteady. He reached up and pulled the duffel bag from the overhead compartment. Everything they owned. Their entire life in one worn bag. But it felt lighter now. Ready, sweetheart? Lily grabbed his hand and grinned. Ready. They walked up the aisle together, past empty seats and scattered magazines. Past the galley where the flight attendants smiled and waved. Past first class where champagne glasses sat abandoned. And then they were at the door. Rachel stepped aside, her eyes glistening. Thank you for flying with us, Mr. Webb. And thank you for everything. Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak. He stepped through the door and onto the jetway. The corridor stretched before him, leading to whatever waited beyond. His legs felt weak. His heart pounded. Lily squeezed his hand. Don't be scared, Daddy. He looked down at her, at this beautiful, brave little girl who'd survived so much. I'm not scared, sweetheart. It was the truth. For the first time in years, Marcus Webb wasn't afraid. He was going home. They walked together toward the light at the end of the jetway. And whatever waited for them there, Marcus knew one thing for certain. He was done being invisible. The terminal exploded with sound the moment Marcus stepped through the gate. At first he didn't understand what he was seeing. A crowd of people stood in a semicircle beyond the security barrier. Some wore military dress uniforms. Others were in civilian clothes. All of them were watching the gate with anticipation. And then they saw him. A man in the front broke away from the group and strode forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped dark hair and the confident bearing of a fighter pilot. His uniform was immaculate, captain's bars gleaming on his shoulders. He stopped 3 feet from Marcus and snapped to attention. Chief Master Sergeant Webb. His voice carried across the terminal. Captain Daniel Reyes reporting for duty. Marcus's breath caught. Danny. Little Danny Reyes. The scared kid who'd sat in that cockpit 9 years ago. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a man, a captain, a leader. Danny? Marcus whispered. My God. Reyes's composure cracked. His eyes glistened and his jaw trembled. Chief. His voice broke on the word. I've been waiting 9 years to see you. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Marcus in a fierce embrace. Marcus stood frozen for a moment. Then his arms came up and he hugged back, holding tight to this man who'd been a boy, this pilot who'd almost died. "I thought I'd never find you," Reyes said into his shoulder. "I searched everywhere. Nobody knew where you'd gone." "I'm sorry." Marcus's voice was rough. "I'm so sorry, Danny." "Don't apologize. Don't you ever apologize." Reyes pulled back, gripping Marcus's shoulders. "You saved my life. You saved all of us." Marcus shook his head. "I just did my job." "Your job?" Reyes laughed. A sound caught between joy and disbelief. "Chief, your job was to sign off on maintenance logs. Your job was to go home to your family. Instead, you stood on a runway and refused to move until someone listened to you. I saw the crack. Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't. That's what you never understood." Reyes's grip tightened. Everyone else walked right past it. 3 technicians, 2 inspection teams, a computer diagnostic system. They all missed it. You didn't. Lily tugged at Marcus's hand. "Daddy, who is this?" Reyes looked down, noticing her for the first time. His face softened instantly. "Well, hello there." He crouched to her level. "You must be Lily. I've heard a lot about you." "How do you know my name?" "Because your daddy used to show me pictures of you when you were a baby. He was very proud of you even then." Lily studied him with 6-year-old scrutiny. "Are you one of the pilots my daddy saved?" Rhea's smile wavered. He glanced up at Marcus, then back at Lily. "Yes, I am. Your daddy is a hero." "I know." She said it matter-of-factly, as if stating an obvious truth. "He's my hero." Reyes blinked rapidly. He stood and turned away for a moment, composing himself. Marcus put his hand on the captain's shoulder. "It's okay, Danny. It's okay." "It's not okay." Reyes's voice was thick. "Do you know what it is like, Chief, to fly every day, knowing you shouldn't be alive, to look at your wife and kids and know they'd be grieving if it wasn't for one man? Danny, I have 3 children now. 3. None of them would exist if you hadn't stood on that runway." He turned back, tears streaming openly down his face. "How do you thank someone for that? How do you ever repay that debt? You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything." The crowd behind Reyes had grown quiet. Marcus became aware of them again, watching this reunion with wet eyes and trembling lips. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Chief Webb, there are some other people who'd like to say hello." 2 more figures emerged from the group. A woman in her mid-30s with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. A man in his early 40s, graying at the temples, walking with a slight limp. "Chief Webb." The woman's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. "Major Catherine Torres. I was in the 2nd aircraft that day." Torres. Marcus remembered her. The youngest female pilot in the squadron. Fearless. Talented. He'd worked on her jet 100 times. "You probably don't remember me," she said. "I was just a lieutenant back then. Cocky as hell. Thought I was invincible." "I remember you. You used to argue with me about pre-flight procedures." Torres laughed, a sound that released some of the tension. "I did. I was an idiot. I thought you were being paranoid, checking everything 3 times. And now I check everything 4 times, because of you." She stepped forward and hugged him briefly, but fiercely. "Thank you, Chief. For my life. For my career. For my family." The man with the limp approached next. His face was weathered, marked by years of service and hardship. "Lieutenant Colonel Robert Chen, retired." He extended his hand. "I was in the 3rd aircraft." Marcus shook his hand. "Colonel, I retired 3 years ago, medical discharge. Took some damage over Syria that couldn't be fixed." He gestured at his leg. "But I got 15 more years in the cockpit after that day. 15 years I shouldn't have had." "I'm glad you're here, Colonel." "I almost wasn't." Chen's voice dropped. "That morning, September 14th, I was ready to fly. I'd checked my instruments. I'd done my walkthrough. Everything looked perfect. and then some crazy crew chief runs out on the runway screaming at us to stop. I wasn't crazy. No, you weren't. But we thought you were. I almost taxied around you, almost ignored you and took off anyway. Chen's jaw tightened. If I had, I'd be dead. My wife would be a widow. My kids would be fatherless. All because I was too arrogant to listen. He gripped Marcus's hand harder. You didn't just save my life that day, Chief. You taught me humility. You taught me that the people on the ground matter just as much as the people in the air. I carried that lesson for 15 years, and I passed it on to every pilot I ever trained. Marcus felt the tears coming again. He couldn't stop them. I didn't know, he managed. I didn't know any of this. Because you left. Reyes stepped forward again. You saved us and then you disappeared. We never got to tell you what you meant to us. I was sick. I couldn't handle. We know. We found out later about the PTSD, the hospitalization. Reyes's voice gentled. We tried to find you, Chief. We really did. But by the time we tracked you down, you'd already moved. And then your wife. He stopped. The silence was heavy. Sarah died 2 years ago, Marcus said quietly. Cancer. We heard. We wanted to come to the funeral, but we couldn't find out where it was. You'd gone completely off the grid. I didn't think anyone cared. We cared. Torres spoke up. We never stopped caring. Every September 14th, Chen added, we have a toast. The three of us wherever we are in the world. We raise a glass to Shadow, the ghost who saved our lives and then vanished. Shadow. Marcus hadn't heard that name spoken with such reverence in years. I forgot that was even my call sign. We didn't. Reyes pulled something from his pocket, a challenge coin worn smooth from years of handling. He held it up, and Marcus saw the inscription, Shadow, 388th Fighter Wing, September 14th, 2015. Guardian. We had these made, Reyes said. One for each of us. A reminder of what you did. A reminder that heroes don't always wear wings. He pressed the coin into Marcus's palm. Now you have one too. Marcus stared at the coin. His hand trembled. Danny, I can't accept this. You don't have a choice. Reyes closed Marcus's fingers around the coin. You're one of us, Chief. You always were. You always will be. The crowd began to applaud. Marcus looked up startled and realized that dozens of people had gathered. Airport staff, other travelers, families waiting for loved ones. All of them watching this reunion with tears in their eyes. Daddy? Lily tugged his hand again. Why is everyone crying? Marcus knelt down and pulled her close. Because sometimes, sweetheart, people cry when they see something beautiful. Is this beautiful? He looked at the pilots who'd become his family. At the strangers who'd become witnesses. At the little girl who'd kept him alive through the darkest years. Yes, sweetheart. This is beautiful. Danny. A new voice cut through the crowd. Marcus looked up and felt his heart stop. A man was pushing through the crowd. Tall, familiar. A face Marcus hadn't seen in 3 years. His brother. Danny, Marcus whispered. I called him. Reyes stepped aside, smiling. I figured you'd need a ride. Danny Webb broke through the last of the crowd and stopped in front of his brother. He was thinner than Marcus remembered. Older, but his eyes were the same. Kind. Steady. Home. Marcus? Danny's voice cracked. You idiot. Why didn't you call? I didn't want to be a burden. A burden? Danny grabbed him by the shoulders. You're my brother. You could never be a burden. I lost everything, Danny. Sarah, the house, the car, everything. I know. I know all of it. Danny pulled him into a hug. That's why I've been waiting. That's why I kept the job open. I knew you'd come eventually. I just had to be patient. How did you know? Because you're a web. And webs don't give up. They just take longer than most to figure things out. Marcus laughed. It was a broken sound, half sob, half joy. He held on to his brother like a drowning man holding on to a lifeline. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry I shut you out." "Stop apologizing. You're here now. That's all that matters." Lily wiggled between them, demanding attention. "Uncle Danny?" Danny released Marcus and swept Lily up into his arms. "There's my favorite niece. Look how big you've gotten. I'm your only niece." "Which is why you're my favorite." He tickled her and she dissolved into giggles. "How was the flight? Did you see anything cool?" "We saw fighter jets. They flew right next to the plane and saluted Daddy." Danny looked at Marcus, eyebrows raised. "Long story," Marcus said. "I've got time." Danny shifted Lily to his hip. "Come on, let's get out of this airport. Maria's making dinner and the kids have been asking about their cousin all week." "Danny, wait." Marcus turned back to the pilots. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't thank us." Reyes stepped forward. "We thank you. And we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow morning, 0900 hours, McCord Air Force Base. There's something we want to show you." "Danny, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking." Reyes's voice held the easy authority of command. "Consider it an order, from a captain to a chief. You outrank me now." "I outrank everyone." Reyes grinned. "Well, almost everyone. Colonel Hayes keeps me humble." The colonel rolled her eyes. "Someone has to." Marcus looked at the faces surrounding him. Pilots who'd become friends. A brother who'd never given up. A daughter who'd given him a reason to live. "Okay," he said finally. "Tomorrow, Aero 900. "Good." Reyes clasped his shoulder. "Now go be with your family, Chief. You've earned it." The crowd began to disperse. Passengers continued to their gates. Airport staff returned to their duties. But many paused to shake Marcus's hand to thank him, to tell him they were glad to have witnessed this moment. One elderly woman pressed a $20 bill into his palm. "For your daughter," she said. "Buy her something nice." Marcus tried to give it back. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can." Her eyes were fierce. "My son served in Afghanistan. He didn't come home. But you saved 3 boys who did. That's worth more than money." She was gone before Marcus could respond. He stared at the bill in his hand, then at the challenge coin in his other hand. 2 gifts. 2 symbols of a world he'd thought he'd lost. "Marcus." Danny touched his arm. "You ready to go home?" Home. The word felt strange. Foreign. He hadn't had a home in years. But looking at his brother, at his daughter, at the path stretching out before him, Marcus realized something. Home wasn't a place. It was people. It was belonging. It was knowing that someone would catch you when you fell. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." They walked through the airport together. Danny carried Lily on his shoulders, making her laugh with terrible airplane puns. Marcus followed behind his duffel bag, lighter than it had ever felt. Passengers stepped aside as they passed. Some nodded in recognition. Others smiled. The story had already begun to spread. At the exit, Marcus paused. He looked back at the terminal, at the gate, where his life had changed, at the jetway, where he'd walked from invisibility into the light. "Marcus!" Danny called. "You coming?" Marcus turned away from the past and walked toward the future. The parking garage was cold and smelled of exhaust, but Marcus barely noticed. He was still processing everything that had happened. The salute, the letter, the reunion. Here we are. Danny stopped beside a worn pickup truck. "Sorry about the ride. Maria took the good car." "This is perfect." Danny unlocked the doors and helped Lily into the back seat, buckling her into a car seat that looked brand new. "You kept a car seat." "I told you I knew you'd come." Danny climbed into the driver's seat. "I've been prepared for 3 years." Marcus got in beside him. The truck started with a rumble, and Danny navigated toward the exit. So, Danny said, keeping his eyes on the road. Fighter jets, huh? It was unexpected. That's one word for it. Danny glanced at him. The gate agent called me, you know. Patricia Chen. She's married to a general. I heard. She told me what happened on the plane. The whole story. The salute, the colonel, everything. Danny. Why didn't you ever tell me? Danny's voice was calm, but Marcus heard the hurt beneath it. About September 14th. About what you did. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. We've got a 20-minute drive. Marcus leaned back against the headrest. Where to begin? I had a breakdown, he said finally. After the incident. I couldn't handle the attention, the praise. Everyone calling me a hero when all I could think about was how close we'd come to disaster. That's survivor's guilt, Marcus. I know what it is now. Back then I just thought I was losing my mind. And Sarah. The name still stung, even after 2 years. She was diagnosed 3 months after the incident, breast cancer, stage 3. Jesus. I took the medical discharge so I could take care of her. The Air Force didn't fight it. They probably figured I was too unstable to be useful anyway. That's not true. It felt true. Marcus stared out the window. The Portland skyline passed by unfamiliar and full of possibility. I spent 2 years watching her die, Danny. 2 years of hospitals and chemotherapy and hope and despair. And then she was gone, and it was just me and Lily. Why didn't you call me? Because I didn't want you to see me like that. Broken. A failure. You're not a failure. I couldn't even afford bus fare to your house until last month. I've been living in a 1-bedroom apartment with mold on the walls. Lily's been wearing the same shoes for 8 months because I couldn't afford new ones. Marcus. Danny's voice hardened. Look at me. Marcus turned. You are not a failure. You're a father who kept his daughter fed and safe during the worst years of his life. You're a man who survived things that would have destroyed anyone else. And you're a hero, whether you believe it or not. The Air Force called me a hero. It didn't feel like it. Maybe not then, but what about today? When those jets flew beside your plane, when those pilots hugged you and thanked you for their lives. Marcus didn't answer. You saved people, Marcus. Real people with real families. That matters. That will always matter. Lily's voice piped up from the back seat. Daddy, are we almost there? Almost, sweetheart. Danny smiled into the rearview mirror. Just a few more minutes. Marcus watched his brother drive. The same steady hands. The same quiet confidence. Danny. Yeah. Thank you. For not giving up on me. Never. Danny reached over and squeezed his shoulder. You're my brother. I've got your back. Always. The truck turned onto a residential street. Small houses with neat lawns, children's toys on porches, the comfortable chaos of family life. Here we are. Danny pulled into a driveway. Home sweet home. The front door burst open before they even got out of the truck. 3 children came tumbling down the steps, followed by a woman wiping her hands on a dish towel. Uncle Marcus? The kids swarmed him the moment he stepped out of the truck. 2 boys and a girl, ranging from 8 to 12, all talking at once. Mom said you were coming. Did you really fly on a plane? Can Lily play with us? Marcus laughed, overwhelmed by the onslaught of affection. One at a time, one at a time. Maria pushed through her children and pulled Marcus into a tight hug. You're finally here, she whispered. We've been praying for this day. I'm sorry it took so long. You're here now. That's what matters. She released him and turned to Lily, who was watching shyly from behind Marcus's leg. And this must be Lily. Oh, sweetheart, you're beautiful. Lily hid her face against Marcus's thigh. She's a little shy, Marcus said. That's okay. Sophie, come meet your cousin. The youngest of Danny's kids, a girl about Lily's age, stepped forward. She had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. Hi, she said. I'm Sophie. Do you want to see my room? I have dolls." Lily peeked out. "What kind of dolls?" "All kinds. And a dollhouse. My daddy built it." Lily looked up at Marcus. "Can I, Daddy?" "Of course, sweetheart. Go have fun." Sophie grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her toward the house, chattering excitedly. The other kids followed, already arguing about who would show Lily what first. Marcus watched them go, his heart swelling. "She needs this," he said quietly. "She's been so isolated. She needs family." Maria looped her arm through his. "And so do you. Come inside. Dinner's almost ready." The house was warm and chaotic, and alive. Toys scattered across the living room floor, family photos covering every wall, the smell of pot roast drifting from the kitchen. Marcus stood in the doorway, taking it all in. This was what he'd been missing. This was what he'd denied himself. "You okay?" Danny appeared beside him, holding 2 beers. "Yeah?" Marcus took the offered bottle. "Just processing." "Take your time. You've got plenty of it now." They stood in comfortable silence, watching through the window as the kids played in the backyard. Lily was laughing, actually laughing, chasing Sophie around a swing set. "She sounds happy," Danny said. "I can't remember the last time I heard her laugh like that." "Kids are resilient. Give her a few weeks of normal, and she'll bloom." Normal. Marcus tasted the word. "I'm not sure I know what that means anymore." "It means this: family dinners, bedtimes, arguments about homework and chores. It's messy and exhausting and absolutely worth it. I want that for her, more than anything." "Then stay." Danny turned to face him. "The job's real, Marcus. Full-time work at the garage, benefits, enough money to rent a decent place, enough stability to build a life." "I don't know how to thank you." "You can thank me by showing up tomorrow morning ready to work." Danny grinned. "And by letting me tell everyone that my brother is an actual, genuine fighter jet saluting American hero." Marcus groaned. "Please don't." "Too late. I already texted everyone I know." "Danny." "Relax. I'm kidding." He paused. "Mostly." Maria called from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready? Everyone wash up." The chaos resumed. Kids thundering downstairs, water running in bathrooms, arguments over who got which seat. Marcus let himself be swept along. He sat at a table crowded with family, with food, with love. Lily beside him, already fast friends with Sophie. Danny across the table catching his eye and smiling. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he belonged somewhere. The meal was simple, but delicious. The conversation was loud and messy and wonderful. And when Lily fell asleep at the table, exhausted from the day's excitement, Marcus carried her upstairs to a bedroom that had been prepared just for her. Pink sheets, a nightlight shaped like a star, a stuffed bear waiting on the pillow. "Danny's been planning this for months," Maria said from the doorway. "He wanted everything perfect." "It is perfect." Marcus laid Lily on the bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. "More than perfect." He sat on the edge of the bed watching his daughter sleep. Her face was peaceful in a way he hadn't seen in months, maybe years. "Marcus," Maria's voice was gentle, "you should get some rest too. Tomorrow's going to be big." "McCord, I almost forgot. Danny told me, the pilots want to show you something." "I don't know what else there could possibly be." Maria smiled mysteriously. "I guess you'll find out tomorrow." She left him alone with his daughter. Marcus sat in the dim room listening to Lily breathe. The challenge coin in his pocket pressed against his thigh. The letter from Reyes crinkled in his jacket. What a day. What an impossible, overwhelming, beautiful day. He thought about the morning. Waking up in that cold apartment. Wondering if they'd make it to the airport on time. Wondering if Danny's job offer was real. Wondering if he'd ever feel like more than a ghost drifting through life. And now, here he was, surrounded by family, remembered by brothers in arms, saluted by the sky itself. Seeds we never see grow, the old man on the bus had said. Maybe he was right. Maybe the seeds Marcus had planted all those years ago were finally blooming. He leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead. "Sleep well, sweetheart," he whispered. "Tomorrow's going to be a good day." He closed the door softly behind him. Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in the guest bedroom of Danny's house, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a home that wasn't his. The refrigerator humming downstairs, the creak of settling floorboards, the distant murmur of Danny and Maria talking in their bedroom. Normal sounds, family sounds, sounds he'd almost forgotten existed. He rolled over and checked the clock. 2:47 a.m. In 6 hours, he'd be at McCord Air Force Base, facing whatever Reyes had planned for him. The thought made his stomach clench. What more could there possibly be? The salute, the reunion, the letter. Wasn't that enough? Did he really need to walk back into that world? The world of uniforms and protocols and military precision? He closed his eyes and saw Sarah. She was sitting on the porch of their old house in Utah, the sunset painting her face in shades of gold. She was smiling that soft smile she saved just for him. "You're thinking too hard," she said. "You always think too hard." "I don't know what to do," he whispered to the memory. "I don't know who I am anymore." "You know exactly who you are. You've always known. You're just afraid to believe it." "Believe what?" "That you matter. That you're worth something. That people remember you." "I'm nobody, Sarah. I'm just a broken man trying to keep his daughter alive." The memory Sarah shook her head. "You're Marcus Webb. Call sign Shadow. The man who saved 3 lives by refusing to move. The man who raised our daughter alone. The man who survived when everything fell apart." "That doesn't feel like much." "It's everything." Her voice was fierce now, the way it got when she was defending something she loved. "Do you know what I saw when I looked at you? I saw strength. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that bends but never breaks. I broke Sarah. After you died, I broke. No, you bent. You bent so far I thought you might snap. But you didn't. You're still here. You're still fighting." She reached out, and he could almost feel her hand on his cheek. "Stop running from who you are, Marcus. Stop hiding. Let them see you." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You just forgot." Her smile softened. "Wake up tomorrow and remember. Remember who you were. Remember who you can be." Marcus opened his eyes. The ceiling stared back at him blank and ordinary. But something had shifted inside. A door that had been locked for years had cracked open just a little. He closed his eyes again, and for the first time in months, slept without dreams. The alarm went off at 6:00 a.m. Marcus was already awake, already dressed, already sitting on the edge of the bed with his hands clasped between his knees. He'd found some clean clothes that Danny had left for him, jeans that actually fit, a button-down shirt without holes, shoes that didn't look like they'd survived a war. He barely recognized himself in the mirror. "Daddy!" Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She was wearing pajamas, borrowed from Sophie, covered in cartoon unicorns. "Good morning, sweetheart." "Where are you going?" "Remember the pilots from yesterday? They want to show me something." "Can I come?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't know what to expect at McCord. Didn't know if it would be appropriate to bring a child. "Please, Daddy." Lily's eyes were wide and hopeful. "I want to see the planes." He couldn't say no. He never could. "Okay, but you need to get dressed quickly and eat breakfast." "I will." She was gone before he could say another word, thundering down the stairs with the energy only a 6-year-old could muster. Marcus smiled despite himself. Whatever today held, at least he wouldn't face it alone. Danny drove them to McCord Air Force Base. The gate guards checked their IDs and waved them through with surprising efficiency. Someone had cleared their arrival in advance. "You nervous?" Danny asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you're alive." The base sprawled before them, all hangars and runways and the distant roar of engines. Marcus felt the memories pressing in. The smell of jet fuel, the heat of the tarmac, the camaraderie of men and women bound together by purpose. He'd missed it. God, how he'd missed it. "There," Danny pointed ahead. "That's where they told me to go." A crowd had gathered outside one of the hangars. Marcus could see uniforms, civilians, children. "That's a lot of people," Lily said from the back seat. "Yeah." Marcus's throat tightened. "It is." Danny pulled into a parking spot and killed the engine. He turned to look at Marcus. "Whatever happens in there, I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" "Danny, I mean it. Whatever you think of yourself, whatever you believe you are, I'm proud. I've always been proud." Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded. They got out of the truck. Captain Reyes was waiting by the hangar entrance. He wore his dress uniform medals gleaming on his chest. Beside him stood Torres and Chen, equally resplendent. "Chief Webb." Reyes saluted. "Welcome to McCord." Marcus returned the salute instinctively. The motion felt strange after so many years, but also right, like putting on a glove that still fit. "Captain, you didn't need to do all this." "Yes, we did." Reyes gestured toward the crowd. "There are some people who want to meet you." Marcus looked at the gathered faces: pilots, mechanics, officers, enlisted personnel, families with children, all of them watching him with expressions of respect and anticipation. "Who are all these people?" "Your legacy, Chief." Torres stepped forward. "Every person here has a connection to what you did. Pilots you trained, mechanics you mentored, family members of people you saved. Word spread after yesterday. Everyone wanted to be part of this." "Part of what?" Reyes smiled. "You'll see. Follow me." They walked into the hangar. Marcus's breath caught. An F-35. Lightning II stood in the center of the space, gleaming under the overhead lights. It was beautiful, a work of engineering art, power and grace, made manifest in metal and composites. But that wasn't what made Marcus stop in his tracks. Painted on the side of the aircraft, just below the cockpit, was a name. Shadow. "We had it commissioned 6 months ago," Reyes said. "The Air Force doesn't usually name aircraft after crew chiefs, but we made an exception." Marcus stared at the letters, his call sign, his identity, emblazoned on the side of the most advanced fighter jet in the world. "I don't understand." "This aircraft is assigned to the 388th Fighter Wing, your old unit." Reyes placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Every time it flies, it carries your name. Every mission, every exercise, every deployment, Shadow will be in the sky." Marcus's legs felt weak. He reached out and touched the fuselage, running his fingers over the painted letters. "You did this for me. We did this because of you. There's a difference." Chen stepped forward. "You saved our lives, Chief. But more than that, you changed how we think about maintenance, about the people on the ground, about what it really means to keep pilots safe." "The Air Force updated its entire inspection protocol after your incident," Torres added. "They call it the Webb Protocol. Every F-35 in the fleet undergoes the same checks you developed, the same attention to detail, the same refusal to cut corners." "I didn't develop anything. I just looked at the fuel coupling." "You looked when no one else did. That's the point." Reyes's voice was intense. "You taught us that vigilance isn't about following checklists. It's about caring, really caring, about the lives that depend on your work." Marcus turned back to the aircraft. His reflection stared back at him from the polished surface. Who was that man? The crew chief who'd saved 3 lives. The broken father who'd lost everything. The ghost who'd spent years trying to disappear. All of them, he realized. All of them and more. "Daddy!" Lily tugged at his hand. Your name is on the plane. I see it, sweetheart. Does that mean it's yours? Marcus laughed, a sound caught between joy and disbelief. No, sweetheart. It just means they remember me. Of course they remember you. She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You're my daddy. Everyone should remember you. The crowd that had followed them into the hangar let out a collective, "Aw." Marcus felt his face flush. Chief Webb. A new voice. Authoritative. Commanding. Marcus turned. A man approached through the crowd. Tall. Distinguished. Stars on his shoulders. General David Chen, the commanding officer of the 388th Fighter Wing. Patricia Chen's husband. General? Marcus straightened instinctively. At ease, Chief. The general extended his hand. It's an honor to finally meet you. Marcus shook his hand. The honor is mine, sir. My wife told me about the encounter at the airport. She's been talking about nothing else since. The general smiled. She said you looked lost, defeated, like a man who'd forgotten his own worth. I suppose I had. That ends today. The general's voice hardened. What you did 9 years ago saved lives. What you're doing now, raising your daughter, surviving, persevering, that saves lives too. Different lives, but no less important. With respect, sir, I'm not saving anyone. I'm just trying to get by. That's where you're wrong. The general gestured at the crowd. Every person here has a story about you. A moment when you made a difference. A time when your attention to detail caught something everyone else missed. I was just doing my job. And your job mattered. The general stepped closer. Do you know why we named this aircraft after you, Chief? It wasn't just gratitude. It was a message. To every mechanic, every crew chief, every enlisted person who thinks their work doesn't matter. He pointed at the name on the fuselage. Shadow. The one who works in the dark so others can fly in the light. The one who's never seen but always essential. We named this jet after you because you represent every invisible hero in the Air Force. Every person who keeps the mission going without recognition or reward. Marcus felt the tears coming. He didn't try to stop them. I don't deserve this, he whispered. You deserve more. The general's voice softened. But this is a start. Reyes stepped forward. There's one more thing, Chief, if you're willing. What? We'd like you to sit in the cockpit. Marcus's heart stopped. What? Just for a moment, for the photographs, for the record. Reyes smiled. For you. I'm not a pilot. I've never... You don't need to be a pilot to sit in the seat of the jet that bears your name. Torres took his arm gently. Come on, Chief. Let yourself have this moment. Marcus looked at Lily. She was bouncing with excitement. Do it, Daddy. Do it. He looked at Danny, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at the gathered crowd, hundreds of faces watching with hope and pride. And he looked at the jet, at his name painted in bold letters, at everything it represented. Okay, he said finally. Okay. The crowd parted as he approached the aircraft. A ladder had been positioned against the fuselage. Marcus climbed slowly, his legs trembling. The cockpit was open, waiting for him. He swung his leg over the side and lowered himself into the seat. The smell hit him first. That unique combination of electronics and leather and possibility. He'd inhaled this scent 1,000 times while working on aircraft. But he'd never experienced it from this angle. He looked out over the hangar. The crowd seemed distant from up here, small. The world looked different from the cockpit of a fighter jet. How does it feel? Reyes called up to him. Marcus gripped the flight stick. His hand fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for him. It feels like home, he said, and he meant it. The camera flashes started. Phones came up throughout the crowd. People cheered and applauded. But Marcus barely noticed. He was lost in the moment, in the sensation of sitting where pilots sat, of seeing what pilots saw, of understanding finally why he'd dedicated 12 years of his life to keeping these machines in the air. Because this mattered. Because the mission mattered. Because the people who flew these jets trusted their lives to men like him. And he had never not once let them down. "Daddy." Lily's voice cut through the noise. "Can I come up too?" Marcus laughed. "I don't think that's allowed, sweetheart." Actually. Reyes appeared at the base of the ladder. "We can make an exception." 2 minutes later, Lily was sitting on Marcus's lap in the cockpit of an F-35 Lightning II. Her eyes were as wide as saucers. "Daddy, this is amazing." "I know, sweetheart." "Can you fly it?" "No, but the pilots who do, they're the bravest people in the world." "You're brave too, Daddy." Marcus hugged her tight. "Not as brave as you." They sat together for a long moment, father and daughter, surrounded by the machine that bore his name. The crowd continued to cheer. The cameras continued to flash, and Marcus Webb, for the first time in years, felt truly alive. They climbed down eventually. The crowd surged forward, everyone wanting to shake Marcus's hand to thank him, to tell him what he meant to them. A young mechanic barely out of tech school said Marcus's story had inspired him to join the Air Force. A pilot's wife thanked him for her husband's life, even though Marcus had never worked on his aircraft. A retired colonel who'd served with Marcus decades ago told him he'd never forgotten the young crew chief who worked harder than anyone else on the flight line. Story after story, face after face, a tapestry of lives connected by a single thread. Marcus Webb. Shadow. The ghost who refused to disappear. When the crowd finally thinned, General Chen approached again. "Chief Webb, there's one more matter to discuss." "Sir." "My wife mentioned you're looking for work, that you've been struggling financially." Marcus felt his face flush with shame. "I'm starting a job with my brother tomorrow, sir. At his garage." "That's good. Honest work." The general paused. "But I wonder if you might be interested in another opportunity." "Sir." "The Air Force has a program for retired maintenance personnel, consulting work, training the next generation, passing on the skills and knowledge that made you exceptional." Marcus's heart began to race. "I've been out for 9 years, sir. I'm not current on any of the systems." "Systems can be learned, but attitude, dedication, the kind of instinct that made you see a crack no one else could see, that can't be taught. It has to be shown." The general handed him a business card. "Think about it. The pay is good, the benefits are excellent, and you'd be making a real difference." Marcus stared at the card. His hands were shaking. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it. That's all I ask." "I'll consider it, sir." "Good." The general smiled and walked away. Reyes appeared at Marcus's side. "That's quite an offer. I can't believe he made it." "I can." Reyes clapped him on the shoulder. "You're Shadow Chief, the best crew chief I ever knew. The Air Force would be lucky to have you back." "I'm not the same man I was." "No, you're better." Reyes's voice was firm. "You've been through hell. You've lost everything, and you're still standing. That's not weakness, Chief. That's strength." Marcus looked at the business card again. A phone number, an email, a path back to the world he'd abandoned. "I need to think about it." "Take all the time you need." Reyes squeezed his shoulder. "We're not going anywhere, and neither is that jet." He gestured at the F-35 still gleaming under the lights. Shadow. The name seemed to glow. "Thank you, Danny." Marcus's voice cracked. "For everything. Thank me by living the life you deserve." Reyes pulled him into one final embrace. "You've been a ghost long enough, Chief. Time to step back into the light." They drove home in silence. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement. Danny kept his eyes on the road, giving Marcus space to process. The business card sat in Marcus's pocket, pressed against the challenge coin. 2 symbols of possibility. 2 doors he'd never expected to open. "You okay?" Danny finally asked. "I don't know." Marcus watched the city pass by outside the window. It's a lot to take in. The job offer, all of it. The jet, the ceremony, the people who remembered me. He shook his head. I spent years thinking I was invisible. Turns out I was just hiding. What are you going to do? Start at your garage tomorrow. Keep my word. And the Air Force thing. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to think about it. Really think about it. He pulled out the business card and studied it. Maybe it's time to stop running. From what? From who I used to be. From who I could be again. Danny smiled. That's the Marcus I remember. They pulled into the driveway. Maria was waiting on the porch, her face full of questions. Sophie stood beside her, bouncing with excitement to see Lily. Welcome home, Danny said. Home. The word didn't feel foreign anymore. Marcus got out of the truck and lifted Lily gently from her car seat. She stirred but did not wake. How was it? Maria asked. Incredible. Marcus carried Lily up the steps. I'll tell you everything. But first, I need to put her to bed. He carried his daughter upstairs and laid her on the pink sheets. She looked peaceful, content, safe. Everything he'd wanted for her. He sat on the edge of the bed watching her sleep. We made it, sweetheart, he whispered. We actually made it. She didn't respond, but her lips curved into a small smile as if she'd heard him in her dreams. Marcus pulled the challenge coin from his pocket and turned it over in his hands. The inscription caught the light. Shadow. 388th Fighter Wing. September 14th, 2015. Guardian. Guardian. That's what he was. That's what he'd always been. Not a pilot. Not a hero in the traditional sense. But a guardian. Someone who protected others from the shadows. Someone who caught the dangers no one else could see. He'd lost sight of that. Lost himself in grief and poverty and despair. But today, standing in that hangar, sitting in that cockpit surrounded by people who remembered, he'd found himself again. Thank you, Sarah, he said to the empty room, for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. He could almost hear her response, her laugh, her voice, her unwavering faith. You always knew who you were, Marcus. You just forgot for a while, but you remember now. And that's all that matters. He kissed Lily's forehead and stood. Time to go downstairs. Time to tell Danny and Maria about the ceremony. Time to plan for tomorrow and the day after, and all the days to come. But first he walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, jets were flying. F-35s streaking through the clouds at impossible speeds. Pilots trusting their lives to machines that bore his name. Shadow. The ghost who saved 3 lives by refusing to move. The father who raised his daughter alone through the darkest years. The man who survived when everything fell apart. Marcus Webb placed his palm against the glass, the same way he'd touched the window of the airplane when those jets had appeared beside him. I see you, he said to the pilots he couldn't see. And you see me. He smiled. For so long he'd been invisible, overlooked, forgotten. But the sky remembered. The pilots remembered. And now finally, he remembered too. He turned away from the window and walked downstairs to join his family. The job at Danny's garage could wait until tomorrow. The Air Force offer could wait until he was ready. The future with all its uncertainty and possibility could wait. Tonight, there was dinner to eat, stories to tell, laughter to share. Tonight, Marcus Webb was home, and he was never going to be invisible again. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the tarmac at Hill Air Force Base, Utah. He wore a uniform again. Not the dress blues of active duty, but the contractor badge of a civilian consultant. His name was printed clearly on the ID, Marcus Webb, Maintenance Training Specialist. Beside him stood a group of young crew chiefs, fresh from tech school, eager and nervous, and impossibly young. Listen up, Marcus said. In a few minutes, you're going to walk out to those aircraft, and begin the most important job of your lives. You're going to check every system, every component, every bolt and wire and seal. And when you're done, you're going to do it again. The young faces watched him intently. Some of you are going to think this is overkill. You're going to think the computers catch everything. You're going to think one missed check won't matter. He paused, letting the silence stretch. You're wrong. He pulled the challenge coin from his pocket and held it up. 9 years ago, I caught a defect that 3 technicians and 2 inspection teams had missed. A hairline crack in the fuel coupling. If those jets had taken off, 3 pilots would have died. The young crew chief straightened. I didn't catch it because I was smarter than everyone else. I caught it because I cared more. Because I looked when others walked past. Because I understood that the pilot in that cockpit was trusting me with their life. He pocketed the coin. That's what I'm going to teach you. Not just procedures, not just protocols, but care, attention. The kind of vigilance that comes from knowing truly, knowing that your work matters. He gestured toward the flight line. Now get out there and make me proud. The young crew chiefs scattered, heading toward their assigned aircraft. Marcus watched them go, seeing echoes of himself in their nervous energy. Nice speech. He turned. Reyes stood behind him, grinning. I thought you were deployed. Got back yesterday. Couldn't miss your first day of training. Reyes clapped him on the shoulder. How does it feel? Marcus looked at the jets on the flight line. At the young crew chiefs beginning their inspections. At the sky vast and blue and full of possibility. It feels right. Good. Reyes pointed to the nearest aircraft. By the way, there's something you should see. They walked together across the tarmac. The jet Reyes indicated was an F-35 identical to the others except for one detail. The name painted on the side. Shadow 2. The original Shadow is still at McCord, Reyes explained. But we thought the training squadron should have one too. A reminder of what you taught us, what you're teaching them. Marcus traced the letters with his fingers. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep making a difference. That's all we ask. Marcus smiled. I will. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Good luck today. Daddy, Sophie and I made you a card. Uncle Danny says you're going to be amazing. I love you. Attached was a photo. Lily and Sophie holding up a hand-drawn card covered in airplanes and hearts and the words Best Daddy Ever in crayon. Marcus's eyes blurred with tears. Good news, Reyes asked. The best. Marcus pocketed his phone. Come on, I've got young crew chiefs to train. They walked together toward the future. Behind them the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the tarmac. But Marcus Webb wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. He was standing in the light exactly where he belonged. And somewhere in the sky, jets were flying. Jets that bore his name. Jets that would never forget. Because heroes don't always wear wings. Sometimes they wear grease-stained uniforms. Sometimes they stand on runways and refuse to move. Sometimes they raise daughters alone and never give up. And sometimes, after years of being invisible, they finally let the world see who they really are. Marcus Webb looked up at the endless blue sky and smiled. He was Shadow. He was a guardian. He was home.